Game 3 tonight, Denver is favored by 3. Miami has lost their last 2 home playoff games. Here's an interesting anecdote Josh and I discovered while grinding the All-22. Who won Game 3 when? Yes.
Isn't that football?
No, it's a lot of people think it is, but when you really dig down to basketball,
it's 22 guys.
Really?
Because we're watching bench chemistry.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyways, the winner of Game 3,
Summer League players thrown in.
has won every series so far.
That's a great stat.
That's because we were grinding. Brew, I know you're 10 toes down, but who you got?
I'm going to give you another stat. I wasn't even thinking about this, but since you threw that up there, this might get under Nick's craw or stick in his craw. You know, Nick, the last 5 times that a team is split at home in the finals, 1-1,
they've gone on to win the title.
The last 5 teams to do that.
The title?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Saying the last 5 teams that had
Golden
home court.
State did it twice. Toronto did it.
Yeah.
And
no, that's a good one.
I think of Miami or San Antonio.
That's a good one.
I like that a lot.
But yes, so, but here, look, I got Denver tonight. As you know, I'm 10 toes down on the Nuggets. I don't think their defense, and Michael Malone, and a lot of people thought he was putting on an act. Oh, he's just trying to play the underdog card. That's Michael Malone. Mm-hmm. He really was upset with their effort, their lack of discipline. And after 2 days of hearing it, I think they're going to come out and not have those same defensive lapses that allowed Miami to get all those open looks, particularly from 3. So I think they'll hold Miami. Miami shot 49% from 3. And if they're going to do that, then it's hard to beat anybody.
Ask Boston.
And Boston, but I'm not saying they're not going to hit some threes, but not 49%. So I think they close that off. I think Michael Porter Jr. especially, because he was pretty solid in Game 1 defensively. He's not a great defender, but he was solid in Game 1, horrific in Game 2.
Yep.
So I think he comes back to the mean. And then I think, Nick, and if you saw it in Game 2, when their defense was active and really getting some steals, forcing some turnovers, getting some stops, they got out in transition. You got to get out in transition to some degree against Miami, because if you allow them to just sit back in that zone or their set defense, it's going to be tough. So I think for those reasons, Denver can pull this out.
That's all fair. You mentioned Michael Malone spending 2 days really getting after Denver might lock them in. Michael Malone was pretty angry about their defense in Game 1.
Right.
And he said, listen, they just missed the open shot. So there were 2 days there that he was getting after them, and it actually got worse. I've got Miami tonight and for the series, and for a few reasons. And first, I want to talk about the home court stuff. Mm-hmm. The reason that I think that loss for Denver was so devastating for their chances to win the series is not because Miami is some dominant home team.
They sure aren't.
But it is because Denver is not a good road team. They were not in the regular season. They had the 11th best road record in basketball this year, sandwiched, I think, between Minnesota and the Chicago Bulls. They have not been a great road team this postseason. So it is less that Miami will raise their game. Well, they were.
Tell that to the Lakers.
But that wasn't the only series they played. They were 1-1 against Minnesota. They were 1-2 against Phoenix, and then they were 2-0 against the Lakers. But it is less about Miami raising its game when they're at home versus on the road, and more about Denver falling off significantly when they are not at home with that crowd and that altitude and that inherent edge. And here's the other part of it. I don't think there are significant adjustments for Denver to make other than the one you mentioned. Michael Porter Jr., can you make shots?
Yeah, please.
Can you play better? Which is similar to Miami's adjustment of Caleb Martin. Can you be something closer to who you were in the Eastern Conference Finals than 3 points in each of these games? Mm-hmm. Those aren't really adjustments. That's, can this guy play better? I think Miami has actual adjustments. Adjustment number 1. Match Bam's minutes to Jokic's minutes, and therefore don't get railroaded when you have to put Cody Zeller or whomever's on the court. And maybe if you are matching Bam's minutes with Jokic's minutes, you don't have to play Zeller at all. You can put Kevin Love in at center and match their small ball with your small ball. I think that they can ask Jimmy Butler to be more at home, assertive, looking for foul calls and seeing if he can get KCP or Aaron Gordon in foul trouble and get to the line. I think there are more wrinkles for Miami to roll out, and that's before Tyler Hero even comes into the series if he does. And I just don't trust Denver as a dominant road team because they haven't been all year.
Can I give you a Michael Porter Jr. wrinkle? So here are his stats. Obviously, he's gotten worse as we go. He's at, barely 17%, 18% here in the finals versus Miami. So this has been a common refrain of mine if you're a fan of the show, where there's a certain point where you're shooting so poorly, I would like you to stop taking threes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get a little bit closer. So game one, he had a put-back dunk, and he attacked the basket and had this little flush on Bam. And then against the Suns, he had this big dunk again against Kevin Durant. Game two, he didn't take a shot even close to the paint. He had one that he had to take that Joker dumped off to him. His shot clock was expiring. Go downhill, attack a little bit. He mentioned it in his not post-game, but media availability. Right. That he's like, I got Gabe Vincent on me. I can take him to the hole and score, but that's not within the flow of our offense. We want to space out. I'd like to see him attack a little bit more, get a little more confidence.
Well, one thing, that getting out in transition helps that. All right, so that would get him going downhill, maybe get a few dunks. But, yeah, he can attack the rim. You said initially, I don't think this is what you meant, but move a little closer, like he's going to take some long twos. The difficulty with
he
the
means
long
a
two
lot
versus
closer.
three.
A lot closer.
A lot closer.
A lot. Significantly
I
closer.
agree. He can attack the rim.
Dunk the ball.
And I also think that what they're going to do, and this will bleed into our next question, but Jamal Murray, they can get, like Butler's guarding him. Mm-hmm. They can run Butler through a lot of actions or a lot of pick and rolls and try to get the mismatch with Vincent or Strus or anybody else on Murray. So I think they'll do a lot of that stuff as well.
Before we move on, do either one of you anticipate a blowout tonight?
No.
In either direction? No. Okay. If it's close late, who do you trust?
Yeah, tricky.
And you had this stat, John Schulman, I think, tweeted it, but then we dug further into it. So this is the Miami Heat by quarter this postseason. Just a dominant fourth quarter team. How does that compare to the rest of the league this year, this postseason? Show Miami's fourth quarter. The important thing is the number. The Lakers were the second best fourth quarter team. They were plus 31. The Nuggets have been the third best. They were plus 19. So how does it compare historically? Here are the three best fourth quarter playoff teams ever. This year's Miami Heat, the bubble year Miami Heat, and LeBron's Cavs in 07, which is odd. That surprised me. But those are the only three teams ever to have a plus 90 fourth quarter point differential.
How many of those teams won titles?
What? Well, right now, none of them, okay. But there's only been two. But the point that I understand that part of it, Brew. The point I'm making is Miami's ability to weather any storm, no matter what happens over the first 36 minutes of the game, and then respond by taking control of it in the fourth is really unlike almost anything we have seen. And if we don't think it's a blowout, why would you trust Denver to out-execute Miami down the stretch when no one has?
Well, one, because they've been good themselves in the fourth quarter, as you saw on that. Not as good as Miami, obviously, but they have been good. They got the best player on the floor. They've got another clutch guy in Jamal Murray. They withstood those fourth quarters with the Lakers. So, yeah, they're smart. They're smarter than Boston. I think they've got more scores outside of Giannis than Milwaukee has.
That's true.
So, yeah, I think they'll be fine.
Do you ascribe any of that, even 1% of that, to Miami underachieving during the first three quarters of the game?
No, I don't ascribe it to that, but Zach Lowe, friend of all of ours, pointed something out. Because listen, I think I watch basketball as closely as anybody. I think I understand it really well. But Zach has an ability to see things that I just simply don't see. He said that more than any other team over the last few years, he believes Spoelstra keeps almost like an NFL coach that will call a play early in the game to set something up later in the game. Yeah, right. That Spo has specific actions off screens that he keeps in his pocket to unveil late. And he talked about that that beginning of the fourth quarter, which is when this game flipped, the Duncan Robinson explosion, that they were running actions off screens that they hadn't been running the entirety of the game. So, which can put Denver in a rough spot where if they're screwing up on the actions on the screen and then Malone calls timeouts, yells at them like, guys, you got to be locked in, and then they switch it on you, your being locked in can almost work against you. So I think that might be the reason for it.
Yeah, just for the record, Josh and I also knew that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
We were out there grinding.
Should have asked you first.
Still has a considerable lead on MVP after dropping 41 in a losing effort in Game 2. Jimmy still hasn't had that monster breakout scoring game. Here's his numbers this postseason. Only averaging 17 after close to 38 against Giannis. So who's more likely to drop 40? We'll start with Broussard. You have control of the board.
Jokić. He's a much better scorer. They will likely stay in single coverage against him because they know if he gets big numbers, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win. And he doesn't have the responsibilities on the other end. Like Jimmy being locked in on Jamal Murray, we talked about it yesterday, not only keeping him from scoring a lot, but getting up a lot of shots. He had 22 shots in Game 1, 15 in Game 2. A lot of that is Butler being able to deny him and just get him out of the flow. And so Butler, if I'm Denver, I am going to really put Jimmy in a lot of action, not just to get him off of Jamal, but to wear him down. And I think they're going to go at him and try to wear him down on that end to some degree, so he's so focused on the defensive end that he can't do it offensively. And what you hope is that unlike Game 2, he didn't do as much offensively during the first 3 quarters, but the last 7 minutes he had plenty left. You want to try to wear him down to the point where he doesn't have that much left at the end of a game.
I 1,000% agree with Brew, and it will all go further as this. I think that the number one thing that Denver wants to prevent is Jimmy going off. Because when Jimmy is scoring in the mid-high 30s, Miami feels unbeatable this postseason. You know what I mean? When he is rolling, it feels like it leads to, and unlike what we've talked about with Jokić, where his offense is almost independent of what the rest of the team is doing. It breeds a confidence. It leads to Miami getting their defense set every time because they're making baskets. I think Miami would love, they're not going to change their game plan or approach, but they would love nothing more than for Jimmy Butler to have a dozen points after the first quarter. And I said it earlier, I'll say it again. I think at home, where you typically get a friendlier whistle, I think he should absolutely try to draw, yes, the pump fakes and try to get to the free throw line 9, 10, 11 times. That's also time for him where he can rest a bit on free throws. Jokić, on the other hand, if I am Eric Spoelstra, if I am Miami, I am going to let Jokić beat me scoring the basketball until he actually beats me scoring the basketball. And we talked about it yesterday that Isaiah Thomas, Magic Johnson, Steve Nash, some of the greatest point guards ever, some of the greatest passers ever, their highest scoring playoff games, their teams did not win. It is the same thing with Jokić. So I understand it's not as simple. Spo doesn't want us to think it's simple to do. I get that part of it, but I do think it's a sound strategy.
The thing is this. He had 31 through the first 3 quarters, and they're up 8. So I think Denver, as I said yesterday, they lost it on the defensive end. Like, their offense was fine. You look at all the percentages, the effective field goal percentage, most of that was up from Game 1. Their problem was they didn't get the stops that they got in Game 1. So, look, if they play Jokić that way, he's going to be smart and try to get everybody involved. But I don't think it's a bad thing if he drops 40. I think they're going to win a game if he drops 40.
You've been in a game where, I'll brag, just because I've played some lower-level basketball. You ever been in a game where you're like, you know what? I should be taking every shot. Like, the best shot is my shot, and it kind of screws you up because you're trying to get other guys involved. I mean, this was a pretty low-level basketball.
Sure. No.
Several older gentlemen.
Yeah, no.
Why? Like, you guys are really old.
Why?
You guys are like
you
something.
playing with 60-year-olds?
I'm just saying there's several. I'm like, I should shoot the ball
Wild's got
every
grandfathered
time.
into a local, Utica Orthodontics league, and he crushes there.
But it screws you up. But I'm like, don't you think I'm going to pass it to you to be nice? But But that's the strategy.
I'm gonna be honest. When I'm being that dominant, I just keep shooting.
Okay.
That's just me. I mean, I'm just gonna keep shooting.
You guys know, Brew has not been that dominant since he was in college, which was, again, back when Jerry West was winning finals MVPs. And you're talking about your upstate New York men's league. We've lost the plot. It's not even a league. It's just local pickup.
It's really just exercise.
Keep score.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.